This is I can do better, and I can't with Joe. I sincerely cannot. I can't. As you probably can see from this here, it is his music program where he's attempting to explain tick rate. Skippable section on a tangent about server tick rates. I already added that as a ending in one of my other videos about him, where I also talked about the completely bollocks he's talking about here. But if we then go down and we take this here, and then take Joe's response to it, this is the entire thing, all of them. You can see this is a new comment. You you can get the gist of how quote unquote trustworthy Joe is by seeing how he have absolutely no grasp of what he's talking about, and yet then trying to interject his dumbness as being the reality. This is the dumbest thing I've heard in a long time. This whole concept falls flat because of ping. This would only work if your ping is 100% consistent. But since your ping is alternating, this can't be done. Even if you would go from 12 to 11 to 12 again, millisecond, the method would not work anymore. It's just a quick explanation to show how spectate bugs happen. Ping is not really a relevant factor because this is what actually happens. Ping just adds another layer of when the information reaches the server. What's dumb is calling what actually happens dumb. Now, Joe really at the bottom of his empty brain thinks this here is how tick rate works. I showed you previously in a video that is not how it works. And I will pull that video up one more time because it actually explains it really well. But if we go down here, we take and fold out this one and we say skippable. And we then say here, so we say 15 to 21, that's 6 minutes. We say 45 to 12, so that's up to 60, and then from 60 to 12, obviously. So that's shy, 3 seconds shy under 6.5 minutes he used on this take here. Now listen to the entire thing because it gives me a headache.
Okay, so I'm just going to pull up an image here from a Serato studio because I'm a musician. I'll probably explain this better if in a musical context with a picture. So imagine this is the server, right? Imagine this is the server. These are all the events, all the things that happen on the server. Say each one of these blocks here is a tick, is a server tick, right? Every time, let's just imagine there's an invisible line that goes across here, like when you press play, a line will play everything that happens. Imagine each one of these lines is a tick on the server, that every time it goes across this, it updates to find what's happening at that particular point. So here you can find there's a kick happening here, there's another kick, there's a hi-hat, right? And you can see, and then if this tick goes, oh, nothing happens here, then the next tick, oh, there's a hi-hat there, and so on and so forth, right? Every time it updates. So imagine that you don't have all of these bars as information. Imagine that this is live, right? It's what everything happens live on the server, right? In real time. But the server doesn't update this frequently to get the perfect image.
Yes, the server updates regardless of what you get as information. The server will update everything. So already here you're talking about ping. The server will update. It doesn't matter if it's 32, 64, or 128 ticks per sec. I think it's called a second, yeah, ticks per second. But it will update regardless whether or not you see the update happening. What you're already doing now is add in ping. If it's a 32 tick server, then this will happen, 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 and you continue 32 times, and then it starts over with the tick update speed. So it updates 32 times per second, 64 times per second, 128 times per second, so on and so forth. And oh my god, Joe.
of what actually happens. Now, imagine this here is this guy's gunshot, right? Imagine that this is this guy's gunshot, and then this is the person's aim punch, right? Imagine that this is the aim punch. Now, imagine that two spaces don't get updated. Say,
Because you are having a different ping, and thus you're not getting the information from the server, and your game is not updating at the correct speed. That's why lower ping gives you a more accurate update. Higher ping gives you lag, it gives you delay, it gives you all those input things, like so on and so forth. The server doesn't care about your ping, it cares about the information that's being given, because the server is client-sided having a client-sided decision. Sorry, then it will overrule the world state with what the client is saying at a delayed frame, a delayed period, more likely actually. And it will always update what is on the server. The information on the server will always update. The moment you say this one and this one disappears, you're talking about ping. You're talking about package loss. The server doesn't give a fuck about that. The server will still update at the same tick rate as it always have. Know what you're talking about before you claim it to be true.
this doesn't get these two don't get updated. This gets updated. These two don't get updated. Right. So if we go like to here, and a tick happens here, sees nothing happened, and then it goes to the next thing. There's no tick here. So
Yes, there is a tick there. Even on the server, there is a tick there, because the server updates at a frequent state as a constant. It always updates at the same rate, the tick rate. Like, this here is why this explanation gave me a headache, because there's so much wrong with all this. Like, oh, Joe.
So it doesn't know that this has happened here. It looks here, it doesn't look here, so it doesn't think anything's happened here, but it updates here that this has happened.
No, it still updates at every single tick. Every single tick. It updates all of them, but because it's client-sided decisions, when I tell the server I shot, that shot appears even if I'm having a higher ping, the shot still happens. So my shot will go from here over to here and still happen, because it overrules the world state. But the ticks will always update on the server regardless what ping people have.
And because it knows this person got shot, it has to basically, instead of this stuff happening here, it's updated to happen here.
No, that is completely incorrect. It doesn't just update it over here just because it knows the person got shot. No. It's trying to, with client-sided server decisions, you have a server trying to predict the future. And by doing so, things like human interactions are more harder to predict, and you would need a high tick rate server, which is why majority of the games that play PvP servers or have PvP servers are gonna go 64 or 128 tick rate, because the more frequent it updates, the more accurate image you get for what is actually happened, and you will not need predictions. A server-sided decision making is not possible in PvP, because you would get delayed information to compare to what happens real time. Server-side decision makings are good for turn-based games, for example.
like at the same time, right? Because it doesn't get that information. It doesn't get the information at the time when the
The information it doesn't get, quote unquote, doesn't get, is dependable on the ping, the latency. The tick will still happen, but it's dependent on the latency between the players and the server. And that is what then updates. That is also why you randomly see like phantom bullets or phantomly get shot by magical bullets when you're behind a wall because someone is having a higher ping. It's fucking annoying, but that is how it works.
information was retrieved, it sort of gets the information retroactively when it decides, oh, this has happened now. So before, on these previous ticks, somebody must have been shot before I updated, so I have to include what happened like here. So you basically see it all happen at the same time.
If you see it happen at the same time, you would not, Joe, you specifically, you would not be able to distinguish cheat whatsoever. If everything happens at the very same time, you would not know whether or not it's cheat, if it's bad server maintenance, or any other argument that can be low internet connection speed or high internet connection speed, but on a wrong server. You would never know which it is. And this here is also why it's easy to prove you wrong, because you don't know what it is you're talking about.
Which leads to these spectate bugs or inaccuracies and whatnot.
No, that is not because of that. The spectate box is happening because there is a certain time from you to the server and from the server to you. So you're getting those delayed informations. That is why Hunt Showdown, for example, and other PvP games are client-sided server decisions. You need to make the decision for the server, and then the server corrects in on what actually has happened. But the server will still attempt to predict the movement of the different things in order for it to run more fluently. I will find the video I showed last time, and I will find a video talking about client-sided and server-sided decisions.
Because it essentially has to include everything on the point at which the server was updated. Now, as I've always said in the past, like particularly with Hunt Showdowns spectate, that if somebody shoots with a really fast aimbot that snaps really fast,
if that happens, then on spectate and on their own visual activities from the game itself, meaning I'm right now live viewing this one here, instead of being a fluent movement, it will go like super fast, and you will see him jump from here to over here to over here. You will not see the movement in between. That is what a snap does. It skips the movement between these points here. But right now you're talking about a lot of other things.
Because of this lag, you're not.
The lag happens when you have internet connection issues, when you have high ping or different ping compared to your opponent, all those things. That's the lag. That has absolutely nothing to do with tick rate.
You're going to see it be that snappy. You're not really going to see it that accurately. How?
Well, again, that's lag, not tick rate. You're talking about something completely different.
Fast it snaps. Because of this lag, you're going to see an interpolated version of what happened, probably out of sequence of when it actually did happen.
Well, even live on the person using an aimbot, you will see the image go insanely blurry in a split second and then appear on the other person. Because no computer can fluently show a snap. Aimbot snap. So what are you talking about, Joe? Oh, right. You are attempting to talk about tick rates, but you are completely incorrect about everything you're saying so far.
So in a way, when you've got spectates and servers that run extremely low tick rates,
then you have low updates, like slow, not low, slow updates from the server. And thus the server needs to predict even more accurately, which is super difficult on PvP games. Like, at least do some research before it is you try explaining what it is.
it essentially helps obfuscate and hide cheaters because you just
No, it doesn't. And that's where the other comment kind of scroll. Ooh, I can scroll down. That's where the other comment comes in. This whole concept falls short because of ping. It will not obfuscate, and it's called obfuscate, cheaters, because you would need it to be 110% precisely either 11 milliseconds, 12 milliseconds. The lower, the better. The moment ping gets into the equation, you would not be able to distinguish the difference regardless of the tick rate of a server, because at that moment some information disappears or is delayed or whatever you want to be calling it. It's package loss, it's latency, it's ping.
to include everything as a spectate bug. Now, you could go tinfoil hat next level and
Well, that is what you do with basically all of your videos, so let's hear it.
say, well, what if, I'm not saying that this is happening, but what if, cheats know what the
Are you kidding me? So now we have sentient cheats, potentially sentient cheats, knowing when the tick happens.
tick rate is of the server, which I'm sure the cheaters probably would know that information. But you got to understand that when
Well, you already have that information, Joe. Googling a little around, you have this one here saying analyzing server performance and tick rate. More information in the comment. You have server tick rate average 30, server tick rate minimum 12. So this one here, analyzing the server tick rate, you can get softwares to do this for you. Client upload rate 30 hertz, client upload rate minimum 15. So like, it's really not a good server situation. Googling a little more, we have more people talking about the server being 30. This website here is their own on Showdown. February 05, 2019 had registration of Hunt Showdown. This when they implemented the trade window. You have it here basically. You can see the website up here. It is called huntshowdown.com news. That you need dashes between the words. The state of hit registration in Hunt. Same as the title here. Just you remember dashes between the words when you're doing it. Steam have this discussion. Why is Hunt registration so insanely bad? Another one's confirming it's 30 to 40 hit rate, tick rate, sorry. So yeah, you have people measuring what the server rate is. Hunt hasn't actually come out and Crytek haven't actually come out and confirmed specifically, but it updates approximately at a tick rate of 30.
when a tick happens, it's going to happen at consistent intervals.
Because it happens at consistent intervals, it will always happen at those consistent intervals. Just because you don't get the information, just because you don't see these two ticks, doesn't mean they didn't happen. It just means your internet got package loss and you didn't receive this information. That's what it means to lose the packages, package loss.
Right? It's always going to happen. at a consistent
Exactly. It is always going to happen. The tick rate is always going to happen on the server.
interval continuously. It's not going to
Yes.
go. It's not going to go tick, tick, blank, tick, tick, blank, tick.
That's what you literally just explained. You explained that this tick and this tick will not happen. Like, and now you're saying it's not going to go like that. Okay, I'm not. Just because of that, I'm going to speed up this last bit here, just to hear how delusional he's going to sound. Because he literally just argued his entire part here as being incorrect.
Tick blank in that pattern, and then go tick blank and go out of order. No, it'll go tick tick blank tick tick blank tick tick blank. If that's the pattern that it updates at.
Tick tick blank tick tick blank. It's not a pattern. Because then you don't have the ticks, and the ticks will always happen. The tick for Hunt is 30 to 40. Approximately, it should be 32 because that's binary, but still. So it will update at that constant speed every single time. If you have a blank, it's your package loss, and that's your internet.
It will update at the same pattern over and over again continuously. It won't change. So
It will update at a pattern that is called tick 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 tick. That is the pattern. That is how it works with tick rates. It updates at a certain speed. The faster it updates, the more accurate image you will get of what happens throughout the gameplay. Those are more expensive servers also, but it will never have tick, tick, blank, tick, tick, blank, tick, tick, blank. No. If you have a blank, it's again package loss.
So if you know what the pattern or the interval rate is of the server, the tick rate, then you could essentially have an aimbot that knows the timing of the server. And whenever you aimbot or you click your aimbot button, it will always try to activate at a point at which would be in between.
So right now you're saying, hypothetically, with an aimbot that knows the tick rate of the server, you would magically know the in between blind spots that happens on the server, and thus be able to interject some actions in those blind spots. Again, that can only be possible, as said down here, if your ping is 100% consistent, because then there are no blanks in the information, and only blanks in the slowness of the slow updates of the server. But because the server updates at a constant, that would not be possible, because you would need to magically interject yourself into the server's rhythm, and no one knows when that is. You might know the server update is 32 ticks, tick rate, but at what instance is it here, or is it here, or here, and here you get the update? Like, at what instance do you need to interject yourself to get the blind angle from the server? If hypothetically it works like you're saying.
Between the points the server actually updates in order to hide or obfuscate the cheats, right? So it would update in between where the server's actually watching what you're doing, right? And then
Actually, here you have a 16 tick rate. Down here you have a 32. I just counted. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. It can be argued as that. So if you double up the update speed, you would have 32. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 20, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. So you would get a more accurate picture of what happens the faster it updates, because the less like blind spots, the less blanks would need to be filled out on the server by predictions.
It would have to include everything that happened at a later date, which would cause more spectate anomalies and discrepancies, which people would just pass off as it's a spectate book, it's a replay book, it's this and it's.
Well, what you saw is a spectate bug. We can take it, which is annoying. Paused. Slightly further ahead. One bullet in the chamber, one bullet in the entire pistol. You have blood splatter on the opponent, blood splatter, opponent. And you have the ceiling with another bullet from this gun here. This is not possible, Joe. That is why it's called spectate bug.
Between where the server's actually watching what you're doing, right? And then it would have to include everything that happened at a later date, which would cause more spectate anomalies and discrepancies, which people would just pass off as it's a spectate book, it's a replay book, it's this and it's that, rather than, or it could actually just be that the cheat weaves its way in and out of the tick rate in order to obfuscate or be pushed along the timeline in order to hide the cheat happening. And that's probably why the shot could potentially come out really.
No. To do that, it would be easier the lower tick rate a server have compared to a higher tick rate, because the slower the server updates, the more gaps you would have for a time to interject yourself, compared to the faster the server updates. You would need a faster interjection.
Really fast sometimes, and sometimes the aim seems more natural because it probably knows whether or not the tick is happening and if something's about to happen, then it probably could squeeze it in quickly in order to
Squeeze in quickly. Imagine 32 updates per second. It would be way easier to squeeze in if it was only 16 updates per second. Now, it would also be way more difficult to squeeze in if it was 64 updates per second. Even more difficult with 128 ticks. That's a binary. Then it continues to 256, 512, and 1024, 2048. Binary.
obfuscate the shot potentially. I'm not saying that this is what's happening, but you could see the potential that if you knew what the interval rate of the tick rate of the server was, then you could make sure that cheats would activate when you activate.
No, you couldn't, because there are absolutely no human that can toggle a cheat at such accuracy that the cheat would then have time to activate before the enemy would disappear in such a split second. Because this here is 32 times per second. This here is 16 times per second. 1 second is 1,000 milliseconds, if I'm not mistaken. Try and divide 1,000 into 32 and see how fast you also need to be just for a single second on the server to activate, and then for the cheat to interject itself. Like, no, you're not gonna have time to do that at a shootout.
Activated them within those intervals where the tick rate isn't actually observing what you're doing, and it'll just be included at a later date, and therefore.
Well, the tick rate is not observing what it is you're doing because of your ping, your latency, your package loss, name it.
Create discrepancies with the replays that will just be passed off as a bug or as a spectate replay, etc. Right? So this is just an idea, but I think this guy probably isn't an aimbot. There seems to be evidence to suggest that this guy's using his aimbot to fish.
There was absolutely no evidence suggesting aimbot from that guy there. It was spectate. Even from his perspective, when he killed Joe, he didn't like snap across ever. I will show you what tick rate is explained as. Here's the video from last time.
All this stuff, we first have to understand what tick rate is. Put simply, tick rate is the number of times per second that the game state is
Okay, so I was not wrong. It was per second.
updated. What? This is called the game loop. Input is processed, calculations are done, and the new game state is sent out. The game state is all the information of what is going on in the game, where your player is, where the other players are, where your player's looking, everything. It's a snapshot of the game. If a server has a tick rate of 64, that means the game state is updated 64 times a second or once every 16 milliseconds. This is what happens when you don't have a tick rate. See, Bethesda don't know how to program good. They tied the physics engine to the frame rate and then just locked the frame rate. It's a much better practice to tie any game loop to time, because time is a constant. Well, it's not, but it's close enough. Counter-Strike is a multiplayer game that uses the client-server architecture. The client is your computer. Every player has their own computer. They connect to a server where the game state is kept. What you see on your computer is not the same as the game state, but it
And yet, Joe demands it must be.
tries to be as close as possible so the game feels good. It also lies to you, but more on that later. When you do something in the game, like click to shoot, that information is sent to the server. The server then updates the game state and sends out the update to every other client. So why 128 tick? Bigger number better. Everybody knows that, but at a certain point, the betterness of bigger number isn't as better as something called diminishing returns. So where's the sweet spot? That sweet spot in Global Offensive is 128 tick. However, Valve decided to run the matchmaking servers at 64 tick. Their reasoning was that a lot of Counter-Strike players have crappy PCs and internet connections, and that 128 tick would actually negatively impact their experience.
Plus, it costs twice as much to run.
We had a scenario where
Better tick rate servers are more expensive. That's what I also said earlier.
competitive Counter-Strike was played at 128 tick and casual at 64 tick. This is not good. The game behaves differently depending on the tick rate. It feels different. It's better if everybody played at the same tick rate under the same game rules. But Mr. War Owl, I hear you say that.
It's, again, shout out to him. He made a perfect video last time. Reusing the video still makes it super perfect. Explain it so much better than what Joe does. So yeah.
That's because the Valve servers are lower quality. The tick rate isn't important. It's true that the servers are lower quality, but it's also true that tick rate is significant to the gameplay experience. Anyone telling you otherwise is wrong. I'm adding this segment into the video. As I'm rendering this, Nato Sphinx uploaded a video where pro player Robs was able to tell the difference between 64 tick and 128 tick 100% of the time just by moving around. So checkmate, atheists. And that brings us to Counter-Strike 2, where Valve has unveiled a new technology they call subtick, which aims to make 64-tick servers good enough. So what is subtick? Every time you perform an input, such as clicking to shoot an enemy, that input is time-stamped, so that when it's sent to the server and the server updates the game state, it will have a very accurate idea of when that input happened. The server still has a tick rate. It's not tickless like some people were saying. That makes no sense. It just
Again, the server doesn't care about you and your information, whether or not you got it, whether or not you're sending it. The server will always update regardless. Like, Joe, you trying to say that it's tick, tick, blank, tick, tick, blank? That's a there's a two tick rate. 2 ticks per second. Like, it doesn't work like that, so it would be tick, 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 tick. 1 tick every 500 milliseconds. Like,
just remembers where you were aiming at the exact moment you clicked instead of tying all of that to a server tick like it did in Global Offensive. I'll make this bold claim because I'm pretty sure I'm right here. When it comes to processing player input, a CS2 64-tick server is more accurate and reliable by a lot than a Global Offensive 128-tick server. The negative to CS2 64-tick is in the feedback the player gets. I think this is a great idea, and I'm kind of shocked shocked that it isn't the standard. I'm sure the technology is more complicated than that, but that's my simple understanding of it. Does that mean we are beyond tick rate? If so, why not run servers at 32 tick? Or how about 1 tick? Obviously, the server tick rate still matters. At 64 tick, even though the inputs aren't limited to intervals, the server is still sending out the updated game state to everyone's computer once every 16 milliseconds. Under 128 tick, that's once every 8 milliseconds. And then your client has to make sense of the information and display it to you on the screen so that the illusion is not broken. Remember,
Okay, so you get the gist that Joe was wrong. I found this video here, which at this point in time, in the video, are explaining why games should be server-sided, have server-sided decisions, server-sided authorities, with the client making the prediction, not the server making the predictions.
Now we can turn to the topic of client prediction and reconciliation. So first, let's talk about the why before we start digging into the how. Not all the machines that connect to your game are created equal. Some players will have lag sending their inputs to the game, and some people will try and cheat by sending incorrect data. For these reasons, you want to have 100% server authority most of the time.
And that's what Hunt does not. They have client-sided authority. So the client interjects their view of the world state, game state, and demands the server must update to their feelings, their needs.
But to keep the snappy movement you need for a racing game or an FPS, for example, you need the client to be able to predict their own movements as well. Now, somehow we have to synchronize the information coming from the client with the reality happening on the server. So if these things get out of sync, we have to apply a correction, and that's called reconciliation, where we rewind to the last correct point and replay the inputs again on the client. So to do this, we need a standardized measure of time between everyone in the game that is totally frame rate independent, since the speed at which the players experience the game will be different for everyone. To do that, we're going to implement a network timer class that simply counts off ticks. Then we'll take snapshots on the client at every tick for the input values, as well as the state of their card, the position, rotation, velocity. On the server, we'll also capture the state every tick.
Which means there are two different ticks here, and they are comparing each other with how the game should be functioning. So there's a tick rate on the client, and there's a tick rate on the server. Hunt does not have that either, so they don't have the same reconciliation as he's talking about.
And we'll keep a queue of the player's inputs as we receive them. The server will simulate the physics and send the correct state back to the client. That's when a reconciliation will happen, if necessary. Make sense? Let's start creating our data structures, which won't take long, and then we'll implement and test that it works by adding our.
So I hope you get the gist of those two videos explaining to you exactly why it is that Joe have no idea what he's talking about, with some of these ticks magically disappearing and such things, because that is the lag, the package loss that happens, but the server doesn't give a fuck about that anyways. And it's even more outrageous that Joe then calls it what's actually happening, when he himself have absolutely no idea what is actually happening with the tick rates. Because of this comment here, I felt the need to again explain why it is that he's completely wrong. Because this here goes to show that he literally just doesn't know what he's talking about whatsoever. And when he then demands his false information is correct, what else is it that then is incorrect that he's then also demanding must be correct? Think about that for just a little moment, and perhaps see you on the next video.